when I talked to Move San Marcos, this is a path in San Marcos on the west side of town. And this actually belongs to an entire apartment complex. I was surprised on how great this path was, just built by an apartment complex. And I'm hoping that the city or someone will help connect it to more places within the city.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Active Towns channel. My name is John Simmerman, and that is Jacob Davis from the Cities in Motion podcast. We're going to be talking about what inspired him to start his own podcast, and also taking a look at some really cool stuff that's happening in the Central Texas area from an urbanism and active mobility perspective. But before we dive right into that, if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts by becoming an Active Towns ambassador. Hey, super easy to do. Just click on the support button right here on YouTube down below, or navigate over to activetowns.org. Click on the support tab at the top of the page. Okay, let's get right to it with Jacob. Jacob Davis, welcome to the Active Towns podcast.
Thank you so much.
Jacob, I always love giving my guests just a quick opportunity to introduce themselves. So who the heck is Jacob?
I'm the host of Cities in Motion, which is a podcast that I just started last fall. It's been really great having the opportunity to interview really interesting people like authors and advocates and just really cool people who like to ride bikes and walk and ride the bus. Outside of that, I'm actually a music educator. I'm a middle school band director. So I guess I'm just extra nerdy. I enjoy band, and I also enjoy public transit.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I was wondering what your background was, because I was able to be profiled on your podcast. Thank you very much for doing that. That was an absolute joy and pleasure, but I didn't get to learn anything about you. So this is turnabout's fair play. I love learning the background. What is your background in terms of getting inspired by all things urbanism and active mobility, and wanting to launch a podcast on the side, since that's not necessarily in your wheelhouse of what you do professionally?
Yeah, well, I think it still has a lot to do with what I do. It's not music education, but it is education. I'm taking these complicated, sort of over your head subjects that some people might think as complicated or not very interesting, and I am interviewing these really cool, interesting guests, or talking about high speed rail and sort of breaking that down and how all of that works. And that's one reason I started the podcast. Another reason is I just think it's really cool, and I wanted sort of a creative outlet outside of the music education realm. And I decided just to go for it, and it's been really great so far.
Yeah, fantastic. And how many episodes are we up to now?
We just got done with season 1, so I am gonna take a short break. I'm about to have a child, so
Oh, wow. Oh, congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, we'll see how quickly we can get him on the back of a bicycle. Um, but while that's happening, I'm trying to get as many interviews as I can and then schedule those out. And season 2 will be out in April.
Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, I do the same thing. I take a break at least once a year. I'll take as much as a month or maybe even 2 months break from producing and pushing out the podcast episodes. And then usually around the holidays, I'll take like a little mini break. And then sometimes when I'm traveling, I just can't produce them and get them out. I've got a trip scheduled for New Zealand for 2 weeks, in about 2 weeks, and I haven't decided whether I'm going to be pushing episodes out or not. So yeah, there's no hurry. Pace yourself and get them out when you can. And talk a little bit about that experience. What's it been like starting a brand new podcast? What surprised you about launching Cities in Motion? And let's start there. What surprised you about that experience?
I was just thinking about this over the past couple of days, and I thought like how accessible some people it's how accessible it is to create content online, whether it be YouTube or podcast or anything. Like if you have something really cool to talk about, like we have really great iPhones. You can buy a mic. I recorded my first couple episodes just my iPhone right here, and then I cleaned up the audio and uploaded that. That was it. And everyone has a phone that could do that. Um, I think I'm answering your question correctly.
Yeah, I mean,
um,
yeah, the surprising thing, I guess that's a great learnings too, is that, it really is accessible. Pretty much anybody. I mean, we all are like, carrying these supercomputers, which happen to have just amazing cameras and microphones attached to them. And yeah, I do the same thing. I end up, pulling the phone out of my pocket and shooting all sorts of video and audio just on the spur of the moment as I'm doing my various adventures. Yeah, so that's good stuff. So we happen to be at your YouTube landing page for your podcast, but your podcast is actually hosted, I believe, with Spotify. Is that correct?
yes, and I connected the RSS feed to YouTube, so it it uploads that to the YouTube feed also. So if you're somehow not subscribed to the Spotify link, you can be subscribed to the YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting too, before we hit the record button, I had mentioned that I started out in the audio only realm for about a year. And then after I interviewed Jason Slaughter with the Not Just Bikes channel in July of 2021, I was just like, oh man, this is so rich. It's so much fun, because so much of what we're talking about on the Active Towns podcast and also in the Cities in Motion podcast is stuff that's in the built environment. So much of it is rich of, being able to show some visuals. And so I made that move to over to the video platform and to YouTube. And it's been quite a hoot. And, now your episode will be 330. So it's been going on for 5 years now. So.
I hope I get some sort of plaque for that 330. That's a pretty good number.
Yeah, yeah, no, it really is. It's a pretty good number, and I'm very, very honored and privileged, to be in this position, and super grateful, both to the original group of folks who came on the pod to talk story with me before I really had much experience doing so. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. So we were all kind of scrambling, trying to imagine what can we do right now? And that was why I launched the podcast.
Like as soon as I started uploading on the Spotify, I quickly thought, okay, Instagram would be great too. Okay, a website. Okay, this and this. But I have learned that it's better just to like have one thing and be pretty good at that, and then slowly add on to it. So right now I have Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to it, and then also YouTube and Instagram. I would love to plan out a website of some kind. I have sort of what I want, but I haven't really find the right domain yet. But that'll hopefully be coming soon, and some actual YouTube content, not just the audio from the podcast.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, because this is a lesson that I learned. And if I were to do this all over again, I would have set up two separate channels. I would have set up an Active Towns podcast channel that would be just my video interviews, and yes, it could also just be like a thumbnail and just audio only, and then a separate Active Towns channel where I'm out in the field doing on-bike interviews and doing profiles of special events and things like that. And so it would be separate channels. That helps actually with the YouTube algorithm. The YouTube algorithm knows better how to push your content out if there's a narrow niche when you're doing that. So that's kind of what I learned too late. I was like, many videos in before I realized, oh, YouTube doesn't know what to do with my channel, because sometimes I'll have a 20-minute, profile out in the field, and then, an hour and 10-minute, conversation in a podcast format. and that really confuses the algorithm. So yeah.
Yeah, I did my first on the bike interview, and I really underestimated how difficult it is to be wired. I have a lav mic on me, and then a lav mic on the guest. So I'm like wired up, and I have the receiver, and then my mic, and then I'm trying to record uh, video also, and trying to interview this guest. I give you very very many props for being able to do
Yes.
that.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm going to pull up your Instagram right now so that folks, can see where we're at there. Yeah, so you are Cities in Motion. Cities in Motion Pod is the Instagram. So you can, folks, you can pop on over there and see that you've got some rich visuals that you produce and push out there. At one point in time, I was up to, gosh, I think it was 9 social media platforms that I was pushing content out. I have since pulled back dramatically. I do push stuff out on LinkedIn, both under Active Towns and under my personal name, on Facebook under Active Towns and under my personal name, on Instagram under Active Towns, and Blue Sky. So I've narrowed it down a little bit, but not tremendously. So it's a full-time job, literally, for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and especially if you have a full-time job already.
Yeah, yeah, that makes it a challenge. Yeah, yeah, fantastic. So we talked a little bit about those early learnings and and some surprises. Any major challenges that you had to navigate through that you would as somebody who's just finishing up season 1 could provide as advice to anybody else wanting to launch a podcast?
Yeah, definitely. Have some sort of way to track all of your guests and the links and the Zoom. Like I have a Notion spreadsheet that I started, and I have a calendar with this is when I'm interviewing, this is when I'm uploading, some way to track everything, and you can integrate Zoom into that Notion spreadsheet, and I just open up that and press ready go, and there it is. Also, video and audio. I thought I had some pretty good experience with video and audio, but I've made a ton of mistakes already, and I'm just kind of saying, okay, I'm never going to make that mistake again. I've learned from that mistake, whether that be forgetting to click a button on my soundboard when I'm recording on my desktop, or having the gain too far up on my lav mic. I made that mistake. So it's okay to make the mistakes right now. This first season, it's purely experimenting and figuring things out, and I hope to at least get 1% better every day as I get into this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And be forgiving of yourself. I mean, like you said, you're learning. This is it's all good and fun, and as long as you can learn as you go, that's a cool thing. I don't even think we mentioned where you're from. So talk a little bit about where we're at.
Yeah, I make a lot of Austin content, but I am not from Austin. My parents are from Austin. My grandparents are from Austin. I grew up in Taylor, Texas, which some strong town people may be familiar with. A couple years ago, they were up in the rankings for the strongest town, which I'm very proud of.
Okay.
Yeah. But right now, I'm living in South Austin in Buda.
Oh, you are? Okay, so you're just south of the city, down in Buda. Okay, fantastic.
We are. We're gonna move out of here pretty soon, but it's been a good time.
Yeah. And so I just moved from Austin. I was living in Austin for the last 11 years and moved back here to Hawaii Island. I'm living now in Kailua Kona. Previously, we were up in the village of Waimea prior to moving to Austin. And we were in South Austin proper, right there in the Zilker neighborhood, just walking distance to the Barton Springs pool. you provided some wonderful images, some rich images from Austin. And so I thought we'd go through some of these and talk a little bit about what inspired you to kind of, share these. So starting off with this image right here in, I think it's just the downtown area of Austin. What are we
Yeah,
looking at? Yeah.
this is critical mass. My I've always said, okay, I'm gonna do critical mass end of the month, and then something comes up. But I made it. I believe this is from uh, December or January critical mass, and we met on the Flugger Bridge, right by Zachary Scott Theater, and we biked about 13 miles that day. It was really great. We just took up the road and made ourselves present, and that's the point of critical mass. And I met some cool people, got some cool content and pictures, and I will definitely be doing that again wherever I end up.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, Critical Mass is an event that has been going on for many, many years, if not decades. I think it started in San Francisco, and it's really about taking over the streets to sort of reframe what streets are for. And so it's sort of an activation event, sometimes with the blessing and support of the city and the police, and sometimes not. So, yeah, and it takes on many different forms. I actually did have the opportunity to film the Kiddical Mass, the first time we did a Kiddical Mass in up in the Mueller neighborhood. So I'll be sure to include that link in the show notes and in the video description below. That was just a hoot. We had 250 some odd people out, all families, all ages, all abilities, rolling down the road there. We had city council members there. We had Lloyd Doggett there. It was just a super, super fun event. And again, it's about reframing what our streets are for. Because, as I declare on my coffee mug here, streets are for people. And so we're trying to, kind of help change that narrative of what are our streets for. Streets are for people.
Hmm. And I just kept thinking during that ride, there's like 2 dozen of us right here within like this 30 square feet. Like, how many cars is that going to take up? 24 people. It's going to stretch all the way down to First Street.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a big part of the point of critical mass is that if we can get cycling and active mobility to a critical mass of people, it actually helps for drivers too. It actually helps alleviate the traffic congestion that can show up at certain times of the day. Being honest about the fact that, for the better part of, 22 to 23 hours of the day, there is no traffic problems, but, it doesn't take much to alleviate a traffic jam or gridlock. And so the more people that we can get to shift to their short trips to active mobility and transit, the better. And that was the whole point of the original critical masses that were out there. You also shared a wonderful photo here, a couple photos from this particular initiative. I know about this initiative, but I've never had the opportunity to profile it. So I was absolutely delighted to see that you shared a couple photos. For the listening only audience, be sure to describe this photo as we go through these couple.
Yeah, sure. I got the opportunity to join Austin Bicycle Meals. Kelly, who helps run it along with his wife, he was one of my first interviews actually, and he was great. He's a great guy. And that night, we filled up our bikes with some chicken noodle soup, or I think it was a chicken pot pie, and snacks and hygiene kits. And it was just really fun. It was really great having the opportunity to get to meet these really cool and interesting people, and also help out fellow Austinites who needed the help. Um, and just getting to experience the city in that way, just by on bike, and just handing out food to whoever wants it. And I believe that's episode 5 or 6 on my podcast. It just Kelly with Austin Bicycle Meals. And I believe he just got he's getting some more media attention recently, so it's really great seeing that happen.
Yeah, yeah, I think I noticed that. I think KXAN may have done a profile on the program as well. Yeah, it's just it's really wonderful when we see these types of initiatives that take place, and then utilizing the bicycle as a tool to be able to do that. I mean, obviously, you could do the same program and zip around town in a car too. But it just warms my heart when I see that, you know, an initiative like this is done and utilizing the bicycle as a tool to be able to deliver this. Again, it reframes that narrative of what our streets are for and what a bike is for. You can actually just put a really simple rack on a bike, a normal bike. It doesn't have to be a cargo bike. I mean, it certainly could be. It could be a workhorse of a cargo bike like this one, but it can just be a normal bike with a basket on it, and you can, you know, be able to do these very, very simple tasks. And I think that's a message that, you know, we don't talk about enough, is that you, just like with the podcast, you don't need super fancy equipment to be able to do something like this and carry on a conversation and inspire other people. Same with the bike. It doesn't have to be a $7,000, you know, Bachfeet style cargo bike to be able to do a simple task of taking some a meal and some essential supplies for hygiene to people in need.
And I think it's a lot just more personable showing up on a bike and like, hey, you want some stuff? Here you go. And then we just hang out and chat for a little bit, and then we're off out exploring Austin some more. I definitely recommend anybody who is interested go check it out at least once.
Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad that you mentioned that it's a little bit more personable, or, you know, to use another word, it's a little bit more sociable. You're not, you know, you're not contained in a hermetically sealed, you know, box on wheels. And so it's so essential, I think, is that active mobility breaks down those barriers. You're not in, you know, in this, you know, home living room on wheels, or as my friend, you know, Kylie Van Dam from Houten in the Netherlands says, you're not wearing a coat of car. You know, you can actually, you know, connect with other people. And I think that's what's really, really special about going to events and just being out and about within your city, is you can make connections with other people. Sometimes they're familiar strangers, and sometimes you run into friends too.
So you brought up the picture right here. I recently went on a bike ride with Move SM, or Move San Marcos, which, my goal with this podcast is just it wasn't on purpose, but I found a bunch of local advocacy groups, and I was just really surprised. I've been going to these cities for years, driving past them for years, and there's people who just who are trying to make their city better to live in, or trying to make it more walkable or bikeable. And this was one of the first groups I found was in San Marcos. I found them on Instagram, Move SM, and Peter, right in the middle, works for Texas State University, and Sarah, who is taking the picture, she is a architect for the city, I believe. And I messaged them, and they invited me out for a bike ride, and we biked around San Marcos, and we checked out all the recent bike lanes, the older bike lanes, and just the paths and trails that are available in the city. And I was just really surprised, because I've never had the opportunity to check those out. I've always just been experiencing that city around the university or by car.
Yeah, yeah, and I can think of another person who would be a fascinating interview for you on the pod. He's actually a professor at the university there, Texas State University, which is a great thing to point out. You mentioned it there. You know, bopping around the campus is this is a quintessential university town. The university is right there at the downtown area, and so very much is a part of the culture of the environment in that historic downtown area. But yeah, Professor Billy Shields is a been on my pod several times, and he and I have done stuff together in Europe as well, and he would be a wonderful interview for you for the future. The I'm really glad that you also kind of brought this into the conversation too, is that we have all of these little towns and cities that we oftentimes just drive by and we never get a chance to like, oh wait, let's explore this place, or let's reach out to a group that might be doing something there. And that's one of the things that I just love about doing this type of work, is you end up that sense of exploration and learning something new about a city. And I don't know, in my case, I end up having like assumptions, ready-made assumptions as to what it's like to be in that town. And then I get there and do some stuff on the ground. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. I'm learning stuff that I didn't anticipate learning about this. I'm assuming that took place in San Marcos for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Sarah and Peter and all the people in this picture were really great. They were very informative, and they're just doing really great work in San Marcos, and I assume around San Marcos. They're, I think one of their partners is working on the Great Springs project, which is a trail from Austin all the way to San Antonio. And yeah, I mean, I've been going to San Marcos for ever since I was a middle schooler. I had a ton of band events there, and I've never even was aware of stuff going on in that city until I hopped on a bike and explored it with this great group.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned the Great Springs project, because that's a very, very exciting project that's happening. Again, that 90-mile stretch from San Antonio all the way up to Austin. We've had Gary Merritt, the executive director of the Great Springs project, here on the channel, and we've profiled that in the past. Again, I'll include the links in the show notes below and in the video description below. Just a fantastic thing that is happening in what I love about a project like that scope, is we're talking about mostly a trail, a natural surface trail, but it does have some paved portions as well. But they're trying to integrate what is, maybe on the first blush of it, just a recreational facility, but then also, when appropriate, connecting it with other trails and feeder trails. And that's happening in San Marcos. It's happening in New Braunfels and other areas all along the way. It's happening even, in the South Austin area, of connecting it to other feeder sidewalks and trails and pathways, urban trails in the lingo that we use in the city of Austin. An urban trail is a paved pathway, to that, because there can also be that dual return on investment of, it's great for utilitarian trips too. It doesn't have to just be recreation. It can actually get some kiddos to school. It can get, an elderly person to, visit, a friend, or get to a doctor's appointment without feeling like they're dependent on a car ride.
Yeah, I don't mean to be so Texas centric. This is just where I'm at right now and where the show is at the moment. But I was in San Marcos for a convention, and I decided, oh, my hotel is right up against the Riverwalk. Not the touristy Mexican restaurants everywhere, Riverwalk with boats, but like the more quieter trail. So I took my first Amtrak ride to San Antonio. I brought my bike on, and I went on a bike ride on the trail going south towards Mission Concepcion, which is just like a 10-minute bike ride. And I was just really surprised on the infrastructure, on the trail itself, and just the accessibility there is within those neighborhoods. It's connecting neighborhoods, and also like as you bike more north, it's connecting to more of downtown, which is great. I wouldn't say it's like it's a pretty narrow path, but you are definitely able to bike on it and run on it and walk on it with a stroller or whatever you have. It was great. Um, there were some great, I guess, zoning or apartments right next to the path with the restaurants on the first floor. And I took it. I did. I meant to upload some pictures here, but I was very busy getting back from that convention. Um, but getting there was actually really great. The Amtrak station, if you've ever been there, is kind of tucked behind the YMCA in Austin, but it's small, it's nice, and but the train was my favorite part. It took a little bit longer than normal, but I wasn't driving. I got to get up and get some snacks. I got to explore the train. I got to read my book. I got to call my wife on my way there. Um, and I recommend if you want to go up to a day trip to go to Taylor, to go to Waco or Dallas, just try it once, and maybe you'll be like, "Wow, this is actually really great." I saw a ton of kids on the bus, so it's not the bus, the train, children, babies, young families, and I think that's a great activity to do with those young kids. They could sleep, they can watch the window, they'd let you out on stops to stretch your legs. Um, and I mainly just wanted to make this San Antonio trip as car free as I could. Um, and I achieved that mostly for about 4 or 5 days. I was just walking around San Antonio. I was biking around, but I had to get home, and the way back, I needed to head back that Saturday afternoon. They didn't have a train, so I got a ride from a friend. So I guess one thing they could improve there is just the timing, more trains to and from San Antonio.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be Amtrak that delivers that frequency. I mean, we've been in Texas and throughout North America, we've been grappling with this challenge of really improving and enhancing train travel to restore it to what it was. It used to be, the envy in the world, being able to get around North America via train. And so it'd be nice to resurrect that and be able to connect through, it doesn't have to be high speed rail, but, frequent, and relatively speedy, being able to connect, these critical cities of San Antonio and Austin and Dallas and Fort Worth and, even over to Houston. So there's lots of work that's being done there. And I appreciate you putting this particular photo in here so that, and I'll describe it for the listening only audience here, is it's the quintessential shot of the Amtrak sign with the downtown background framing the shot, and you're like, oh yeah, it's right here, it's walking distance to be able to get on the train.
Yeah, I talked to San Antonians for rail transit while I was down in San Marcos. We just took a seat by the Riverwalk and recorded a quick podcast, and it was great because they were talking about the same things. Like, we need rail in this mega region that is forming. Uh, they not only want rail for San Antonio itself because it's a very, very large city with zero rail, but they want frequent trips to and from Austin, so that way if you live in San Antonio, you can go see an Austin FC game and be back the same day, or go down from Austin, go see a Spurs game, or go explore the Riverwalk, go to work, attend a convention, or just go on a short day trip with your family. Um, and they're just shooting for just more active, updating their train station first of all, making it level boarding, and that's like their step one. That's I think that's the easiest thing they could do right now, and then their next goals would just to be advocate for the city. They've gotten some bills. Um, excuse me. They've gotten to the ears of some politicians, and they are encouraging um, SART, San Antonio's for Rail Transit. Um, they say keep bringing it up. So that's a good sign. It's not an automatic no, we're not interested. Um, and I think they would also be a great organization to talk to. It was a really great conversation, and that's going to be coming out uh, when I start uploading season two. Uh, yeah.
I
Um,
love it. I love it. Yeah, and frequent viewers and listeners of this podcast, the Active Towns channel, will know that I did an entire summer of Amtrak travel. And so I grabbed my Brompton folding bicycle. My first trip was to go south all the way to Tucson and spend the week in Tucson interviewing city staff down there, and then turned around and came back. And so, yeah, it was a hoot to be able to ride my bike from the house to the train station there in the downtown area, and then, zip on down to San Antonio and then on to Tucson, and to be able to do that later in the summer. That was the very first trip. Later in the summer, I made it coast to coast, and so I went from Austin through Dallas, through all the various states and cities, including St. Louis, all the way up to Chicago. Got off, spent a few days in Chicago, continued on to Pittsburgh, got off, spent a few days literally one day in Pittsburgh interviewing city staff there, and then continued all the way to Providence for the Strong Towns National Gathering in the CNU conference. And so, yeah, this is possible. This is exciting, and I love seeing that image of you. You've got your bike here. You took that with you, and this concept of train travel and bike travel, which is so integral into what makes the Netherlands so special, is you have authentic mobility choices and options. So when we think about the United States and independence and freedom, these are like themes that can really resonate. That's what we're talking about here. This is not a war on cars. This is pro having mobility choice and options is what we're talking about.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was very surprised. I got off the train, I got my bike, and they drop you off right by the Alamo Dome in downtown San Antonio, and I was surprised how easy it was to get from there to my hotel, because they over the past couple of years they've been fenced off this park. It's called Hemisphere Park, right by the convention center, and they recently opened it up, and I was really, really surprised on how great this park was. The path, really wide paths. I saw a speed limit sign that said 5 miles an hour. I'm like, yes, this is great.
Little faster than walking speed. So we've got a couple of other images here that I want to make sure that we address. So this is a wonderful paved pathway. What's the location of this image?
This was also when I talked to Move San Marcos. This is a path in San Marcos on the west side of town, and this actually belongs to an entire apartment complex. I was surprised on how great this path was, just built by an apartment complex, and I'm hoping that the city or someone will help connect it to more places within the city.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, too, is that when we see residential development happening, and hopefully we're integrating more developments into more mixed use sort of, causes where we've got a little bit of meaningful destinations integrated with the residential communities, and we've got a little bit denser, housing choices as options there. Again, not saying we're against single family homes, but, there needs to be a good mix so that we're not basically committing people to have to drive everywhere for every purpose. And then also thinking about ways that you can integrate multi-use pathways as part of that. So you have an off-street network of pathways so that people can be delivered to meaningful destinations, and you can integrate those community development pathways to city network routes and pathways. And I think that that's just a really, really powerful 1-2 punch, is being able to integrate, the on-street network of safe and inviting facilities to an off-street network. And there's some just wonderful success stories around the globe. One of my favorites is way up in the Arctic Circle in Finland. The city of Oulu is very suburban in nature, but the kids ride to school at rates of 70 to 80% through the dead of winter, on conditioned snow on these multi-use pathways. Why? Because it's a safe and inviting, all ages and abilities, off-street network of pathways. So yeah, that integration of on-street and off-street, city-owned as well as privately owned, I think is a wonderful 1-2 punch and a nice, complement of sharing what we call here in Hawaii the kuleana, the responsibility. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And this picture right here is of Sarah, one of the two people that invited me on this bike ride. And you can kind of see on that bar in the very bottom left corner are some bells. Her son was actually on the back of her cargo bike and just going crazy. He was having the best time ever. He was basically my tour guide. He was pointing things out. He was like, "Ooh, what's that thing over? That's cool over there." And he would ring his bike bell. It was really great just seeing a little child enjoying a bike ride as we went around town.
I love it too. And Sarah's riding. It looks like it might be a turn, and it is a what I love to call just a family bike. It's wonderful to be able to see that happening. It's also rather evident that this looks like it is a parking protected bike lane. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah, there happens to, in this particular shot, there's no cars actually parked in the parking spots. But again, for North American cities especially, when you've got these overly wide streets and there's just no reason to have that level of capacity of travel lanes for motor vehicles, it's really easy and simple with some paint to be able to reallocate space and to be able to create something like this where you have a parking protected bikeway, one where a mom feels comfortable with her kid on a bike being able to do that. Yeah.
So I've seen it also reversed, and you can correct me if I am wrong. Like if the cars are next to the curb, first of all, people have to walk across the bike lane, and then when they open or close their door to get out, there's a risk that you may be hit by a door. Now, opposed to what we see here is cars parked on the outermost, I guess, area of the road, right next to the road. Bikes are free to travel and not be at risk of getting hit.
Yeah,
Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And in fact, if we were to nitpick with this design, we might put a little bit of a buffer on the edge to the right-hand side of where the parking spot is to make sure that the passenger side doors have a little bit of swing room so that people on bikes are protected by an additional buffer there. But yeah, I mean, this is a great adaptation of a type of facility that we normally would see in the Netherlands, where it's a parking protected. If parking is allowed on the street, well, let's put the parking closer to the travel lane so that people walking, and if there's a sidewalk there too, people, biking and walking have a more protected environment, protected by the steel and metal and glass of the parked cars. Yeah, brilliant way to do it, and very, very, very cost effective. Good stuff. Yeah, I love it. I wanted to get to a particular event that you attended, which is recently. I was absolutely bummed that I wasn't able to attend this event, and I would normally have actually filmed an entire profile video. I would have been interviewing people, out there on the ground. So let's pop over and take a look at some images here for this event, and I'll let you set it up.
Yeah, this is the opening of the Wishbone Bridge in East Austin. I've been driving past this for years until like that's where I work mostly is East Austin, and I take a look at it every day as I go past from work, and it's finally done. And they were, I showed up here on a Saturday about 2 weeks ago, and there are just thousands of people there. There's politicians, the mayor was there, um, dozens and dozens of bikes. Um, and the first thing I saw was the underpass, the the bridge that goes underneath the road, and it's just a piece of art all by itself. It's so great, and it's making that part of the city super accessible to anybody who wants to get there. Um, uh, it was actually pretty difficult getting on the bridge because it was so jam packed. But I'm going to go back and experiencing it. I'm going to experience it just as a pedestrian and not a podcast documentary host.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. Were you able to do, some interviews out there? Are you wearing your hat of a content creator?
No, I don't have the merch yet. I did see an Active Town's shirt though. Uh, yeah, yeah. No, I did not interview anyone. I'm perfectly fine just like talking to people over Zoom, but I'm kind of shy. Hey, I have a podcast. Come talk to me. I haven't maybe in season 2, but I did get some recordings of all the speeches, and I'm gonna try to put something more solid together other than my Instagram post. But it was great. Atmosphere was awesome. There was free tacos. There was free coffee. Everybody was just happy to be there for a bridge, which you think would be pretty mundane, but it's a really fantastic bridge that really connects East Austin, something that really East Austin deserves. And it's finally making Ladybird Lake, the trail, the Ann and Butler Trail, Ann and Roy Butler Trail, connected without interaction with cars. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, that is the whole point of this particular bridge, the Wishbone Bridge, is to provide an all ages and abilities option to be able to complete that 10-mile loop that goes around Ladybird Lake. And so, yeah, the Roy and Ann Butler Hike and Bike Trail, the Trail Conservancy is the organization that is the stewards of that particular trail. But before this was built and open, if you look to the right of this particular image, up to the top there is where Pleasant Valley Road is. And prior to this, people walking, people biking, people running, people with dogs, we were all constrained to a very, very, very small sidewalk right on the edge of the Longhorn Dam. So it was a very, very scary situation. And there were some incremental improvements that took place to create more space up there at the road level, which makes it more comfortable if you happen to be commuting or riding for any other reason along Pleasant Valley Road. So it's safer up there now, and it's safer down here. And the beauty of this particular beautiful, beautiful tunnel is that now you're also able to connect the Butler Hike and Bike Trail to the Roy Guerrero Park and where all the baseball and softball fields are. So now families have the ability to get to these meaningful activity assets without having to necessarily get in a car, and be able to, get to a whole other network of trails that exists, even further east. And this tunnel actually did exist prior, but it was a tiny little square. It was like a little culvert. And so it was very scary, not in all ages and abilities, welcoming environment, especially for females, because it was a dark and scary and damp and wet place. And so this is absolutely beautiful. I agree with you. This is the crown jewel of it.
It's like it belongs in the Bob Bullock Museum or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks great. Um, yeah, I keep telling my wife, hey, I'm gonna take you out there just to experience it, because she sees how excited I am about it. Like, hey, you want to go to the bridge opening? Um, but I think she wanted to sleep in that day, but I showed up early. I got tacos, and it was a great time experiencing that.
And I do want to point this out too, and I'm going to go back to this image that we saw earlier, but I want to go back to this because it is also another portion of the Butler Hike and Bike Trail, and another portion of the Kuleana, the responsibility of the Trail Conservancy, and that is this portion of the trail that goes under I-35. And this was opened right about the time that I had moved into the city in 2014, and was another huge capital improvement project to the trail, enhancing connectivity, for people for recreation purposes. But I also want to emphasize that these facilities, this tunnel here, and this Wishbone Bridge here, these are also critical connectors which help people live a more car-light lifestyle. If their journey happens to be within an easy biking distance, they can now link together safe and inviting routes through this infrastructure to be able to get to downtown, be able to get to their job, to be able to do these things. And so I like to say that when you build an activity asset such as this, there's a huge return on investment, because this stuff is not cheap. I mean, it does cost money to do this stuff. It's cheap compared to automobile infrastructure, but that's a whole nother topic. But the return on investment of something like this means that it's good for the health and well-being of the society, of community, but it also returns a tremendous amount from an investment perspective on giving mobility options. So people can say, you know what, hey, it's a beautiful day. I'm going to ride my bike to work or to school or wherever, to meet with friends in downtown and be able to utilize these facilities. I think this is just a huge asset to the city of Austin, on the east side, on the west side, everywhere in between. And other cities, just like San Marcos, we were talking about the facilities there. Just like San Antonio, we were talking about the Southside Riverwalk, which connects to several different missions and major parks down there. When you can put these facilities in so they can serve multiple purposes of tourism, of recreation, and of everyday utilitarian trips, all the better.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I I've ran the Austin Half Marathon and a few marathons after that, and I've used this trail every single time. And I'm going to train for another marathon coming up here in August, and I'm probably going to use this trail for the majority of my long runs.
And training, and I've spent lots of times, running out there on the trails too. And so I'll be doing, something for my health and well-being, and needing to just kind of break away from the screen here of editing these videos, and need to get some nature in, and I'll go out there and do that. And one of the things that I'm just so delighted when I see that is I'll be out there running and I'll see kids riding to school. This trail goes right past the high school. And so you see kids riding to school, you see people commuting to their jobs. And so again, you're exemplifying or highlighting exactly my point, is that these facilities serve multiple purposes. They can be health and well-being and recreation, and also utilitarian trips too. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Is there anything that we haven't discussed yet that you want to make sure to leave the audience with?
What I have realized really is a lot of this has just a ton of correlation to community. Like all these urban planning professors, or whether you want more bikeability or you just really love to walk in your downtown, none of that can happen if there is no community. If the downtown is just a parking lot, basically, there's no uniqueness or community or placemaking to those places.
Right, right. When you look back at season one and you're looking at these, these folks that you've interviewed, I suspect that that's kind of a reoccurring theme of needing to reinforce. I mean, we can't just look to our city officials and our leaders and say, it's up to you. Wave your magic wand and make it happen. It sounds like a reoccurring theme might be just what you're saying, is that connecting as a community.
Yeah, no, definitely. From I think it's brought up pretty much every single episode, making this place the best place to hang out, make it a third place, make it a place where I want to take my kids, make it a third place where I want to go on a date, anything like that. And all these people that I interview, that I think that's basically what they want. Being able to move how you want, being able to enjoy a place without breathing in exhaust fumes, and within just a walkable, bikeable city.
Yeah, yeah. Talk a little bit about the name. How did you come up with and settle in on Cities in Motion?
Well, I just kind of, it's really funny. It's kind of developing on its own, really. I thought of Cities in Motion because I want people in this city to bike or walk or run or ride a bus. But then also, I'm talking to strong towns and fiscally in motion. That's another idea. And also civically in motion, within the city council. And all of those are just kind of melding into the title itself. So I think it's sort of developed on its own, really, as I didn't intend this at all, but as I've interviewed more people, the mission statement, the motto has kind of developed on its own. It was really interesting.
You may have shared this earlier, but if you did, I apologize. But what actually was there a specific event that sort of prompted you to want to do this? And you're like, this is what I need to do. I need to do a podcast.
No, I didn't wake up one day and said I'm going to do this. But I think over the past couple of years, I've gotten really, really frustrated with my commute, the way I have to get to work, or the way I see people walking next to the highway. And there's really no option how long it takes for you to get from one place to the other, when it's just faster to get in your car, but also you need to sit in traffic. Um, my wife and I went to Vancouver and Victoria on our honeymoon um, a couple years ago, and it was just a really good experience. It wasn't my intention to make it completely car free, but that's how it ended up because it was just easier. We took the SkyTrain from the airport to our Airbnb, and we walked. We rode the bus. We walked around the parks. We took a ferry over to Victoria, and I just really enjoyed my time there. And coming back, I was like, there has to be another way to do this. And I've had those thoughts over the past couple of years, and I wanted to have a creative outlet and find out more, because obviously I'm not an expert in any of these things. I'm a band director. I can teach you how to play the clarinet really well if you want to, but I want to learn more, and the way to do that, I think, is to talk to experts. And listen and read and experience these really cool situations in these cities and these advocate groups. And I think starting a podcast was a really great way to do that. And sometimes also in my life, I just say, why not? And see how it works out. And it's gone pretty well so far, I think.
I love that too. I can't tell you how many times part of the origin story when I've interviewed folks and saying, well, what inspired you to get engaged and involved in urbanism or with the strong towns movement or active mobility? And they'll bring up some life experience where they were traveling somewhere and they were able to see a different culture and a different way of living, and it inspired them. So I'm not at all surprised, that also came about. But it's interesting too, because most people, when they visit a place like Victoria, BC, or they go to the Netherlands or somewhere else in Europe or whatever, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this was amazing! I was able to walk and bike to so many places and use public transit, etc." Then they get back home and they're like, "Yeah, but that can never happen here," and they just move on. But you didn't. You seemed inspired to make change. Why? What is it about you that wants to make change?
I mean, who else? Who else is going to do it? Like these people who, like, I can't just sit back and say, well, I guess somebody else will do it. Like I said, I want to say, why not? I'm going to do it. I'm going to log into Spotify, make an account, record something on my phone really quickly, edit it, put it out there. And then slowly I start getting these interviews guests, and I start getting more interview guests, and I have already a season. I did not think, like, when I started this, okay, I'm going to have actually a season of episodes of documenting these really cool places and people. And I'm going to be making another season coming up very soon. And I'm already planning trips to these really cool places to document and record car light or car free living. I would just say anybody could do it. A microphone, a decent USB microphone, it's like $50. Or you have your phone, or you have your great iPhone that takes great pictures and videos. Free editing software anywhere online. Just, if it's not going to be somebody else, let me rephrase that. You shouldn't just say, no, that's not me. Just do it. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But if it does work out, then you have that platform and that voice to interview and document really interesting things.
Yeah. What's interesting too about your experience of actually, being in Vancouver and BC is you got to experience it from the standpoint of a very, very large city and then a small city, and I think that's important to realize is that the themes that we're talking about here, they work whether you're talking about huge metropolises or smaller cities and smaller villages and towns and whatnot. It was recently really profiled that Victoria has gone from a mode share of about 4% of people, getting around by bike to over 13%. So, they've done a tremendous job, nearly tripling over tripling their mode share of people getting around by bikes. And it's a testament to the fact that they've been investing a tremendous amount of resources. So the last time I was there profiling the city of Victoria was in 2017. So I'm long overdue for a return trip to film in that area. You were just there a couple years ago for your honeymoon. So your return trip, whenever you and your wife decide to go back for, a return trip, you're just going to be blown away, I think, by the fact that environment has continued to evolve, which I think is the whole point, is that these things are not set in stone and you cannot change them. We can adapt and we can transform our built environments into more all ages and all abilities facilities and environments to encourage hopefully the next generation to have a more mobile existence. And as a new parent to be, I mean, I have to think that that's a part of what's motivating you.
Yeah, definitely. I have really shifted my priorities and made myself more cognizant on how I want to experience transportation experience, travel experience, living, and how any children or sorry, excuse me. Um, like I want to be able to go out and take my child or children out without having to get in a car or having to um like I would just love to everybody get on the bike or everybody get in the cargo bike and we're out of there. Experience your city because I think kids really are more independent than you think. Kids can remember where the park is, and but if they're in the car, they're just staring out of a windshield, and that's all they see. But if they're in a bike, they're going to um, see all the trees. They're going to see dogs. They're going to see people walking or running or playing tennis, and that's I think how I want to experience the city with my family.
Yeah, yeah, and I think what you're getting to as well is, fast forwarding a few years as your child gets older, of being able to live a life where the child has mobility independence. And I had Lenore Skenazy, the author of the book Free Range Kids, and the co-founder of the Let Grow movement organization, and we talk about how important and impactful that is for the development of a child, is to feel like they know how to get around their city. Like you said, if they're in a car, they don't, it's like a black box. They don't understand their city. But if they can get to school, if they can get to the park, if they can get to their friend's house, and it's safe to do so on their own, it's really, really empowering for the child as well as the parents. And so I think that, creating child-friendly cities that really encourage, again, all ages and abilities to have that mobility independence is so incredibly powerful. So it's not about us, it's not about our generation, it's about future generations, right?
On your previous podcast with Diana Leese, you talked about growing up in a more rural part of your state, and you said Chuck Marone also,
Yeah,
or
Chuck actually grew up on a farm, and I grew up on a ranch, and we were both a few miles outside of our little villages, our towns. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, not everybody listening or everybody is going to be. Not everybody has access to like anything moving out of a city in their situation, out to the city. Like, what advice do you have for those people who are living in a more rural part of their state or their city, and how can they experience or embrace like car light living or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and I love this. I'm glad you're turning it around and asking me a question. Why the heck not? Yeah, no, Chuck and I have talked about this. Is that the irony of the fact that we were living in that sort of environment was actually very car dependent, because it also turned out that although it wasn't a highly trafficked road, at least in my case, it was more of a quiet country road. It was incredibly narrow. So it wasn't necessarily a route that my parents felt super comfortable with me when I was super young to be able to ride from the ranch into, the 2 to 3 miles into the town. At the time, the town was only like 4,000 people. Now it's 10x that. It's 40,000 people. And so, I didn't, when I was really, really young, I wasn't really a free range kid all the way to the city, but I did have quiet, rural roads that were dirt roads and gravel roads that I could get around on and get to friends and visit with friends. But yeah, my advice is that we can do a better job as regions and cities and exurban and rural areas to encourage more all ages and abilities facilities by just bringing motor vehicle speeds down. These little villages and rural towns, et cetera, if you bring your motor vehicle speeds down to closer to 20 miles per hour, that's huge. If we can work on doing off-street network of pathways and trails like we talked about in Oulu, Finland, that's a great way to connect exurban areas in as well as village to village, which is what we see in Europe, is you can get on a bike and ride from one village, one city to the next, and there's a separated off-street network of pathways where you can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, good stuff.
I think, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And can you imagine, I mean, being able to get to some of these destinations, which could be inherently bikeable, given the advent of electric assist, and be able to get there because you've got a safe and inviting off-street network of pathways. Good stuff. Good stuff. Final thoughts before we say goodbye.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. This is my first opportunity to be interviewed instead of interviewing people. So a little bit less pressure, but I appreciate having me on. And I've been listening to you for years now. And I've actually, I've been watching your stuff for years. About Austin. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's people here in Austin, of course, that are into this city planning, urbanism, placemaking stuff. And I think you were one of the first people that I discovered outside of like not just bikes and City Nerd and all those great people. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on your podcast. I really appreciate that, and really, really grateful that you were willing to come on this podcast as well. Jacob Davis with the Cities in Motion podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on the Active Towns podcast.
Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Jacob Davis with the Cities in Motion podcast. Be sure to subscribe to his podcast. And if you did enjoy this, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and share it with a friend. And if you haven't done so already, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to the channel. Just click on that subscription button down below and ring that notifications bell. And again, if you're enjoying this content here on the Active Towns channel, please consider supporting my efforts by becoming an Active Towns ambassador. Again, super easy to do. Just click on that join button right here on YouTube down below. You can also leave a YouTube super thanks or navigate over to activetowns.org. Click on the support tab at the top of the page, and there's several different options, including making a donation to the nonprofit. You can leave me a coffee, or buy me a coffee, I think is the term, or you can become a Patreon supporter. Patrons do get early and ad-free access to all my video content. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. And until next time, this is John signing off by wishing you much activity, health, and happiness. Cheers and aloha. And I just want to also say thank you all so much to all my Active Towns ambassadors supporting the channel financially via YouTube Super Thanks, YouTube memberships, Buy Me a Coffee, Patreon, and making donations to the nonprofit. Again, I simply could not produce this content without your support.